I'm going to turn over the program to Daniella Fajardo, who's CEO of Future Growth Paths. She is a fledgling entrepreneur, and she is going to bring her challenge to us. Daniella, why don't you come up, get comfortable in front of the camera?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Next slide, please. And you can go past this one as well. Thank you. Excuse me. So, I am the CEO of Future Growth Paths, and my challenge question is, having a lead or a contact, but not knowing how to engage in a productive conversation to move past the portion where we can actually start talking about business without being so pushy with the sales. Next, please. So I would like everybody in the room and everybody in the chat, if you could please just put down some words, or for you guys here, what comes to mind when you see this image?
Hot mess.
Mm-hmm.
Chaos.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah.
Messy.
I better close my door.
There you go. Can you go on to, please?
Rutenberg CRM.
So what about this picture? Can you guys give me a few words that come to mind when you see this?
Organized,
Anything else?
planned, systematic.
I love it. Thank you. So let's move on to next slide, please. So Future Growth Paths. What I do here is I help clients understand the structure of their businesses through process documentation. So pretty much developing, organizing, and maintaining end-to-end process documentation for them. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of a fun topic. I started the idea back in June 2023. It was formed as an LLC just this past month. I would love to have my first client this quarter, and I will pretty much be operating mainly in the DMV, but we can have a virtual USA, if you will. Next, please. So the main way to generate revenue is going to be project-based, and also through retainer options, just a little bit of, taking care of my clients through a maintenance, going back to them every so often. Thank you. So what is it that I'm trying to solve? I broke this down into two sections. The first one you kind of have to do first to be able to do the last two. So the first one, I am going to save time on redundancies. I did a lot of interviews with about 30 people, and I found that the processes that I have done for them is actually saving them 25% of their time, which is a lot. Sometimes it can range, the minimum that I've been able to save is $500,000 in a year. So, when you put that into numbers, then it becomes a huge amount that all of your employees are saving in your company in a year. Then increasing employee capacity and revenue. So the hardware review showed that 28%, when you have a standard process documentation, companies are saving up to 28% on revenue. I don't have any metrics for saving costs on new hire training, but with a little bit of the interviews that I performed, it showed how when you have that ready, you can just onboard people, let them hit the ground running. If they have questions, then then they come to you and not the other way around. Now, with that said, once you finally capture those processes for people or the businesses, then it's easier to establish and maintain those process documentations, and then be able to figure out what are the key performance indicators that they want. And within that, it's also easier to identify which areas of improvement or automation they want. If they finally figure out, maybe they didn't need a Tesla of a system, they just needed a jet of a system, then that's enough to get you from point A to point B, but you don't need all the whistles behind it. Next, please. So my value proposition, again, this is a little bit separated into two categories. The first one is more tangible, and the second one is more of a emotional value that I bring in here. So the tangible one is the actual documents, the end-to-end process, the procedural one-to-one pagers, the tracking systems where you maintain all of the documentation. And then the emotional value behind this is that, because there's lack of communication sometimes, or because people don't understand their processes, then it's easier for me to put people in each other's shoes, people meaning teams who don't understand each other, to become more friends than frenemies. So, then I put on different Sherlock hats. So it's kind of like knowing what hats to wear, when to use them, and with whom to use them. It's all about the audience here. And what differentiates me, just helping companies go through the journey. For me personally, I love that we can get to that tangible documentation, but for me, it's more about the journey or the process to the process that we take together to get there. And finally here, who's my client? It's any small to mid-sized businesses. So it could be, 20 employees to 5,000 employees. I know that's a big range, but it works depending on the client. If they work in, tech sales, if they're using a SaaS or any CRM, I mostly work with Salesforce, but there's a big range out there too. So as long as they're using that for their internal processes, that is my ideal client. Next, please. All right, so target audience, again, with a little bit of what I just spoke about, companies with sales teams. When you have a sales teams, there's most likely an operating team behind them. So there's going to be a lot of different handoffs, which is when it's the game of broken telephone. Communication gets broken throughout those handoffs. And again, companies that use SaaS or CRM to hand off any type of paperwork. As far as my marketing channels, I've been using LinkedIn, a lot of networking events, my website, which is somewhere where, through LinkedIn and networking, then that's how people know about it. And I recently started a blog that I'll do once a month. So if you have my LinkedIn, you'll be able to see my blog once a month. So my competitors, these are systems that are already established. So Trainwell, it's a system where, in companies, that's where they write their process documentation, and it organizes all of that information for them. The Scribe is a tool where it helps you to automatically write the document itself. So it's a lot of those types of tools. However, with my company, I can use those tools to leverage off of them and use them if they don't have them. Sometimes it's harder to teach other people how to use those tools, whereas when I come in, I can just use it for them and maintain it for them. Okay, yeah, thank you. Again, leveraging on them. So using those tools based on my clients' needs, and eventually, hopefully I can receive royalties from them. If I'm using Trainwell or if I'm using Scribe, then it will be more like a partnership where I'm saying, hey, I want said company to use your tool. Can I get some royalties because I'm expanding your business? So hopefully one day in the future. So again, how to engage in a productive conversation when I identify a client needs my service. Thank you.
I think Lauren's is money.
Okay.
Right, John are gonna go back and forth. John's gonna follow reverse and watch the virtual.
And actually, I can,
Right. Well, I'm back up for people who are online and I'll try to watch the chat and make sure you recognize hands up, like Mr. James Lawson, for example.
I'm also online, John, so I can see, but that's great. I'm Melinda
John.
Sigel and I'm moderating. That was a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
Love everything that you presented. I've got a lot of thoughts, but
Okay,
let everybody else go first.
sure.
First hand up is James Lawson.
Hey Daniella, good morning. And first of all, congratulations on launching your business. Like, yay. It's a big step. So can you help us understand a little bit right now about how you are currently identifying a client that's needing your service? Like, how is that happening right now?
Yeah, so when I go to networking events and somebody explains that they have a software company or they work for tech sales, then I engage more into, do you have an operations team? What type of CRM do you use? And when I start that conversation, I also start asking what the process organization look for you. That way it gives me an idea of how organized or how messy it is, and therefore I
Okay.
kind of do that follow-up with them.
So there's steps to this, right? And I think engaging in productive conversation, and you may do this as part of your funnel, like as you kind of walk through your own sales process. I would definitely, because of the business that you're in and looking for businesses who are probably on a growth curve, right? As we start growing scale, like we need to get the SOPs in place. And we don't always know where we are with some of that stuff. But if you tried like the first step, maybe saying, listen, would you be okay to get on maybe a 30-minute call? Let us do a quick assessment on exactly where your business is right now, what you think you have, what you have, what you know is missing. So we can actually figure out what the gap is.
Mhm.
And then we can talk about what the next step would be after that. I think what we want to do is to lead them to the point of having a really productive conversation, but you might want to have a step where the assessment that you do with them is the thing that leads them into acknowledging, you know what, yeah, we're screwed. We don't have any of this stuff, right? So that then allows you to kind of not pitch, but say, well, listen, here's what I think the next step should be. But if it were me, I would be like, if I've already identified someone, I'd be like, let's jump on a quick call and maybe we can spend 30 minutes and let me work through some questions and let's get some clarity on exactly where you are. It's non-threatening. It allows them to get a feel for exactly where they are in their business and identify the gaps. And then that allows you to be someone who can actually come and fill that gap. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess for me, it's that part where I have gaps of engaging into a conversation to say, would you be okay for me to do an assessment? That's the part where I don't know how to move from, hey, we're just talking, to say, let me look at what you have, let me make an assessment. And I guess there's a little bit of fear where people are going to say, like, I feel like you're selling, so no.
Right.
So
okay. Yeah.
We need to let other people go.
That's a mindset issue. Right? That's a mindset problem. But I think honestly, most people would be open. Again, it's like, what are the words we're going to use, right? But hey, this sounds really interesting. I'd love to really know more about what's going on. Would you be open to having a quick conversation about it? That's all it is. It's not a sale. It's like, hey, I'd love to understand more about what's going on in your business, right? Is this something that you'd be open to? And that, I mean, yeah, it's a very non-threatening question.
James, I don't mean to interrupt you, but we need to let other take turns. And there are other hands raised in the room. Put your hand up
That's
again.
fine.
And then
Thank you,
can go again,
James.
which would be great. Next, we have John Norris, then we have Jen Dalton, and then I've got a couple of comments.
Do I have to take myself off mute here or can I hear?
No.
They can hear you without.
Okay, so Danielle, my question is, and kind of along lines of what James was just saying. One thing that I think would help you have just in general productive conversations is, and you may have it, you know, you didn't use it, but what is like a clear 30-second description of what you exactly do?
Mhm.
So that I hear from you what you're doing and I can go, okay, do I have a problem that she may solve
Mhm.
to engage? I think your presentation was excellent. But when you tell me companies 20 to 5,000 that may have a sales team, may have a back office team, I'm just going, I run a small company, I don't have any of that, so I'm going, I probably don't qualify, but yet
Mhm.
maybe I could.
Yeah.
So I think you have to have a clear 30-second description of what it is exactly you do, what problem or problems you solve.
Yeah.
So that I can engage in a conversation and actually volunteer what maybe I'm experiencing. So that you can say, well, I have experience with your situation, let's, along James' lines, let's grab coffee.
Mhm.
And maybe we have a conversation about whatever.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you.
Jen, you're next.
Here.
Yeah, you do.
Mhm.
Hi.
Hi.
Two thoughts. One would be for business owners who, if you ask them, can you go on vacation?
Mhm.
Do people know what to do when you're not here? And if they're thinking, not really, I think that could be an indicator. The other target market I would think about would be businesses who want to sell in 3 to 5 years, who have not documented their processes yet.
Mhm.
But documenting their processes, capturing how they do things can elevate the value of the business.
Mhm.
That might be a market to think about.
Like startups or.
Businesses who've been around 1 to 3 years, maybe longer.
Mhm.
There are entrepreneurs who've had their business for 20 years and they want to sell in 5 and they're like, yeah, but I haven't documented my processes. It's just been me or my team running everything.
Yeah.
If you want to sell a company, it needs to be easy to run, easy to turnkey operate. So just a thought. I have lots more, but we can talk more about this. In a former life, I did this type of work for big
Mhm.
Fortune 500 companies. So I'm glad
Okay.
you're doing it, not me.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Jen.
Before I call on John, I wanted to add a couple of things.
Yeah, please.
And the 30-second, who you are is really an important place to start, because then you can say to somebody, would you be interested in an assessment?
Mhm.
But are you charging for the assessment, or is that going to be, and if they do the assessment, does that go towards the cost of what their program is? Have you thought that through? And then the other question on top of that is, or comment that I learned a long time ago, is when I start to describe my services, before I do that, I qualify the person to make sure they're the right person and they can go forward. So I say, if you do, if they can explain to you or show you how we work, is this something you can afford? Is this something that you're be interested in
Yeah.
paying for? Qualify it first before you waste a lot of time.
Okay.
John, bless you.
Thank you, Melinda. Daniella, thank you so much for your presentation, and I, of course, am going to go back to LinkedIn. And I'm just curious on, because I went to your LinkedIn profile, and I don't know if you've updated or not. And what is- you have a
Yeah.
day job as well, okay. So that was one thing I was curious about.
Yeah.
Because that certainly is balance
Yeah.
on what you want to do, so. Yeah, so there's I understand the challenge. Trying to balance those two things. But certainly from a process standpoint, you could still, talk about process and things on LinkedIn. So
Mhm.
to help, start building that I'll say reputation, even though you've got a day job,
Mhm.
you can still talk, because I'm not sure exactly what your day job is. I think yeah.
Same thing.
But being able to start to tie the two together,
Mhm.
and a lot of people in the same boat,
Mhm.
trying to do day job and the night job, or the side hustle,
Yeah.
B plan.
Mhm.
So just trying to balance those two, because the more you can build your, I'll say, reputation And I know it's a delicate balance, but building a reputation.
Yeah.
You can do.
Yeah, no, I hear you. That's one of the reasons why I started doing the blog. It's for now a good balance is once a month, just because
Yep.
it's a lot if I do, every 2 weeks even. So at least it's something to start putting my name and my thoughts out there. But thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
I do have a question. So when I say at the very beginning, I help clients understand the way their business is structured through process documentation, which is a little bit of an elevator pitch. Does that not sound like what I described? Okay.
How does that make your clients feel? You want to get feelings into it.
Mm,
So you really want to do something that I help my clients have more time for themselves to work on the business by handling processes or something like. I can help you with how you may want to present what I had said earlier, because you really want to get the emotions. And then you want to tell a story about the client that you helped. Make it up. Nobody will ever know the difference.
okay.
I want to go on to the others so that
Yeah,
everybody gets
please.
to talk. It's Reggie, John, and then Ken.
Okay.
Oh, and then John. So John R. and John N. last.
Lots of Johns. Go ahead, Reggie.
Hi, Daniella. Great presentation. Yeah, I just looking at your question, I think what you really want is clients who self-identify as needing your services, even more than you identify that that you can help them. I think it's them from the first couple of touch points with your company, they identify that they have a need for what you do. And I think that will bring them to the table ready to have those productive conversations. So I think you can show visually what you do better than you are right now. Like if you were to kind of give people, so what you did in the beginning with the visual of the two different desks, that was very powerful, right? And so I think in the way that you present what you're doing, do that even more, because that is very, like, there are people that saw that first desk and they felt that anxiety, right? Like it because it resonated with their situation today. And those are the people that you can help. So I think in the way that you speak and the way that you showcase what you do, you have room to be more, I don't think assertive is the right word, but you can be more insistent on the fact that you are here to help these types of business owners in this situation. And I think at that point, they're going to be qualified. They're going to self-qualify because they see that they're in that situation and that you have the tools and solutions to help them.
Okay, thank you so much. That is extremely helpful. It sounds like maybe I should use more analogies to help to have that emotion of people being able to relate.
Stories.
to
Make them up.
stories.
Tell stories about what you're doing right now with some of the
Mhm.
clients. Nobody's
Okay.
seen them.
Mhm. Thank
Next
you.
is John, and then Ken, John, and then Andy.
Danielle, thank you so much. In listening to you, I learned a lot. Okay, really made me think. So to answer your challenge question, you need to scratch the itch. That's an expression. Scratch the itch. You have to get, in order to bring up the question you asked us, which is, what do you think about doing an assessment? Okay, having you do an assessment. You have to get them to tell you they have a problem. Something is itching them. Okay, now, in the narrowest 30-second pitch, you're avoiding a disaster for them. You're covering their derriere. And that's very important. So risk management is important in a company of a couple thousand. It's important to a company of 5 also. But when a company has hit 25 to 40 people, they're beginning to hire different administrative people, offloading that from the owner, the entrepreneur, who was once one person, 3, 20, etc. So I think you have to have a little bit of sales analysis with them. I use that term. It's pre-asking them about an assessment. It's the questions leading up that gets them to tell you what their problem is, so that you can then say, what are your thoughts about having me do an assessment?
Hmm.
And starting with the word what doesn't give the person the option of yes or no. What are your thoughts? So thank you. By the way, full disclosure, I'm in the CRM and sales management business, so we'll talk later.
Okay,
Great
thank
to see you. Yeah, you bet.
Next, we've got Ken and then Andy.
So I think you've got a great business to pursue. You're obviously enthusiastic. And unlike many entrepreneurs who are starting out from a point of passion, you've identified one of the big things you need to develop, which is selling, because you're going to have to sell. Now, if you go into any bookstore, and there are still some bookstores, and you go look through the sales books,
Hmm.
there are a gazillion of them. And they all address a lot of the things that you're talking about. That feeling of anxiety about asking. That feeling of anxiety about being perceived as seller. The techniques for being yourself so that you're not feeling like you're selling. All of those things have been documented and analyzed, and the resources are out there for you to overcome all of those things. There are two things I want to share. One is stories, the other is questions. If you're working with either an owner or an administrator or middle manager of any business, the likelihood is very, very high that if you ask them, hey, do you like writing documentation for your procedures? There is a very high percentage of likelihood that you're going to get a no, right?
Mhm.
So that's a question that you can just ask anybody. Do you like writing procedures? You are one of the gifted people who does. And so there are other questions like that. How many times has somebody come to you in the last month to ask you how to do something? For the 5th time, the same thing, right? Or something like that. Questions, imperative, stories that have been alluded. Can have a couple of stories, you've been doing this kind of work before, right? So you have success stories, right? But a short success story. I had a miserable manager that asked me to help them out. Their business segment, their department was chaotic. The data that was being collected to manage that business was chaotic. People were interacting in ways that were chaotic. And I came in and I brought order to that chaos. And everybody is so relieved that they gave me a coffee cup when I was done. Just a short story. So
Yeah.
focus on stories you can tell, questions you can ask. Be like a lawyer. Know what the answer is going to be to the question before you ask it.
Mhm.
So stories and questions. That's how to sell.
Okay, I'm writing notes here.
Next up, we have Andy.
I'm going to piggyback on a couple things that have already been said, just maybe saying slightly differently, and then a suggestion. And I think Reggie just put in the chats along the lines of where I was going to go, and that those leading questions. And I think John said something to that effect. I think you've got a lot of the meat there already. It's more along the lines of making sure they self-identify, much like and I'm going to say car salesman, but that has a negative connotation, but something that essentially helps them identify to themselves. Reggie had a question there. I think it's there where it's something along the lines of, what would solving this problem allow you to do? So they're not just telling you things, but they're also telling themselves something. And they're identifying the problem as well as identifying it for you. So because it sounds like in your question, when I've identified the client, but I don't think in your question that you've actually know they need your service yet. You need to make sure that they know and you know in that. So that I don't want to keep going on and on and beating that to death because I think you're hearing it multiple different ways. The other thing that I was going to suggest, it's very admirable, and I think you've done a really good job presenting your business. It may be helpful to you, and I think you're already doing this, putting yourself in more situations to refine that 30-second pitch. If you're not on any places like Lunch Club or elsewhere, because I think many of these will be one-on-one conversations versus large group conversations, where you get opportunities to keep working on your pitch to get it to that 30 seconds and feel what sounds right, not just to yourself in the mirror, but to others. I think that'd be valuable. Lunch Club is like an online business networking. It's free. And there are other opportunities, but that's what I would suggest is getting down that pitch and doing some of the things that people have said in terms of leading questions.
Thank you, Andy. That's really helpful.
Next person.
I just.
Yeah, John. Yeah.
So I think, going back to the 30-second type pitch, I mean, if you were to say something like, I'm an efficiency expert. I assist companies with improving processes so that they can reduce cost, say, accelerate outcomes and provide more free time for whether it's life or other projects. And then that could resonate with somebody going, yeah, I could always use improvement in our processes, like, things that take long, if we could shorten the time, would obviously benefit it doesn't take a genius to go, yeah, if we shortened our time, we'd be, more efficient, potentially make a quicker impact on things. So, in your pitch, you want to try to come up with something that's going to be somewhat memorable. Also helps me understand what problems you may fix for me as a small or large or mid-sized business owner. Or I might know somebody that I talked to yesterday that has the problem you're describing.
Can you put that in the text?
Yeah, my phone's giving me.
I'm taking notes
Okay,
as
great.
people go, but
Reggie, you're
thank you.
next, and then John.
There will be a transcript and a video for
Okay.
you,
Yeah.
so don't worry about taking them.
Okay, thank you.
Reggie, you're next, and then John.
Yes, so I think Jen said it earlier about if you want to sell your business, you need these processes. And then others have mentioned different things like, for HR purposes, but I just thought about all the reasons why somebody needs to do this, right? To have a real business that and so you've got obviously scaling. I think if they want to be acquired or if they want to go acquire other businesses, for HR, like legal purposes, but also just bringing in top talent, right? Like they want to see that there is structure in the process there. I think being able to, if they want to do a franchise or something like that, like they got to have all that stuff in place. So there's many reasons why someone should have a conversation with you. And so I think having those in mind, when it opens up the people that you can help when you go into a room, and it helps you identify them, it helps them self-identify. If you say, okay, if you're aware of all those reasons why your services are needed. So I think writing all those things down and having them top of mind when you have conversations, like it just kind of opens you up to more people that you can help.
Thank you, Reggie.
Next, we've got John, and then I've got something.
So the conversation and the leading questions are different based on size of company, even though the methodology and process is the same. Because when you're talking to an owner of a company of 20, who's not only in charge of production of whatever they sell, but also probably has a bookkeeper and she or he does all the HR and all that stuff and probably hates documentation, right? So that's different than the HR director or the quality control director of a production operation that really cares about that stuff, might have to fight with his or her superior in a company of 3,000. Okay. In each case, the leading questions relate to the symptoms. Okay, so you have to think about what symptoms you're looking for. And casually after you're way up on the trust ladder, because you had commonalities and a nice vibe between you and the other person, where you know something about them and there's a reason to proceed. You get to the point where you can ask questions. Have you ever seen this, that, or the other thing? Anyway, again, I applaud you. You're amazing. And you'll listen to the videotape and be able to prioritize everything and the chats that have a lot of content. So thank you.
Thank you, John.
You bet.
I quickly wanted to ask a question and then I'm gonna have Jen ask
Of
the last
course.
question of the day. And what I really wanted to say is great presentation. I think you really need stories. You really need a hard hitting 30-second, depending upon your audience. Look at trade shows you can go to because there are people out there selling. So that you'll find organizations with sales forces. They can be local things. There's a guy that comes to our group by the name of Bazil. He has a trade show. A lot of these people are sales people, so they may be able to lead to others. And I know a lot of sales organizations, so I will get you referrals.
Thank you.
And with that, Jen, why don't you go ahead with the last question? Today.
What else can our community do for you?
Yeah, if you have anybody who you know in the areas that I described, bring them over. I can send over my email and my website and my LinkedIn. Just if you know of anybody who might be interested, then that's a little bit of a way to spread the word. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Hey, put your contact info in the chat, please.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'll do. Thank you.
Great job.
Back to me. Well, all of you entrepreneurs out there, I know that you have a challenge that you're facing and you're trying to figure it out, and we can help. And we have a spot on next week's calendar where you can bring your business challenge to us. And we will be happy to provide you with insights and input to help you. But if you don't come, you don't get the help, you won't solve your problems, you'll be stuck in the same muck the week after. Next slide. As I said, we've got a cadre of organizers. Many hands make light work, as Jen Dalton says. And so we are always looking for people to share the load. And it goes two ways. You give of your time and your energy to help out, but you also gain in the opportunity to exercise a bunch of important entrepreneurial skills: leadership, collaboration, marketing, coaching. Trying to influence this cadre of organizers is a marvelous organizational challenge that you can take on so that you'll be ready when you've got 30 employees. So come on along, become an organizer, improve your entrepreneurial skills, and improve entrepreneurship in our community. Next slide. Upcoming events. I'm going to refer you to the Central Fairfax Chamber of Commerce events page, which is a marvelous resource for things that are going on in the community. Let me step back so I can read the slide off the big screen. There are a couple of things I want to mention. The first is the Wander In ribbon cutting. Wander In is organized in part by Tess Rollins, a regular participant here. It's a retail incubator in downtown Fairfax City. And they're going to have a ribbon cutting on Friday between 3 and 7 p.m. Go on out if you're in the neighborhood and support that organization. It is a marvelous organization helping retail entrepreneurs in town. The other thing I'd like to mention is Veterans Growing America. It's a pop-up shop in Woodbridge. The vendors are associated with veterans or are veterans themselves, It is a great way to support veteran-owned businesses who are in startup and at the pop-up level of retail. And then the rest of the things that are going on in town, check out the CFCC website. You got a slide? There we go. Help us spread the good word. Follow us on social media so you'll get all of our broadcasts on those platforms. But importantly, we need you to share them in turn with your networks. Do I have to define virality for you guys? We need the word to be spread. We want to help more people, and the way we help more people is to get more people in the room. You can find all of the links in one place on that QR code. That QR code, if you get a chance. If anybody would like a marvelous entrepreneurial adventure, we need a piece of software that you can run on your computer or your phone that will scrape a QR code off the screen so that you can just go click, click when you're on your phone and pick up that QR code. It's $1 million idea I'm going to share with all of you guys. Somebody is going to pick it up and be the next unicorn. Next slide. We're going to turn off the recording so that everybody can converse even more freely.